welcome, STEMinites, right? My name is Amberson Cornett, and I am your host for today's third installment of the STEAM Speaker Series brought to you from AWIS DC and sponsored by Camilico LLC. I am the president-elect for the Association for Women in Science District of Columbia chapter and a multidisciplinary scientist. I have background in intelligence and information operations. I'm a cybersecurity SME, and I'm also studying for a new doctoral candidacy, which I just found out got picked up and approved so I can start my studies. Yes, I'm so happy. I know, right? so, so I have about 22 years of military operations and information operations and intelligence service, as well as background in finance and public health sectors. I'm currently also an elected governing counselor for the American Public Health Association's epidemiology section, and I've held roles in engineering, project management, and space medicine science and epidemiology for around 10 years at NASA Johnson Space Center in my hometown. Of course, I love Houston, Texas. So, our speakers are based on individuals in no particular order: S, T, E, A, and M can be doubled because we are looking at the focus of medicine as well, showcasing specialties in one or more categories. And we don't just feature women in the United States, but we've also had global ambassadors on our channel as well. So I've been fortunate enough to interact with professionals and establish, experts in their fields, respectively. And today, of course, is no different. So I'm privileged to welcome my guest and newfound illustrator friend, I'm sorry, I apologize, Mrs. Mary Hunt. Okay, Mary Hunt. Mary Hunt is representing art. She is a paleo artist, knitwear designer, and freelance medical illustrator. She graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design with a BFA in illustration and went on to receive a science illustration certificate through CSU Monterey Bay. She has been published in several books. You probably have seen them if you are in STEM. Yes, she is a famed artist, and I'm putting it out there. She's been featured in several books and academic papers. She has dabbled in abstract art, and she's currently progressing in her knitting era, where she has been successfully designing sweater and accessory patterns that feature scientifically accurate dinosaur fossils and animal motifs. So, without further ado, I know she's like, I can't hear myself. This is odd, but I love it. Talk about yourself. We are going to talk about you. So, welcome, Mary. I'm too proud to have you on our STEM platform to share your thoughts and your amazing craft, which I've already previewed, and I'm telling you, you're up for some amazing work. How are you? And yeah, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's amazing to be here. I'm so honored that I get to be in the same virtual room as you. Oh my God. But all the other women that you've got lined up and you've already interviewed, it's just like, one of those like I'm not worthy sort of things. But it's
Whatever. I can't pick a favorite.
I,
I'm sorry. I
I
can't pick
know.
a
Yeah.
favorite. You get
But I'm doing
me.
great. I'm doing great. And this is exciting. And yeah, hearing my bio back at me, I have a very hodgepodge life. It sounds
Yeah,
like.
like all of us, right? And that's one of the reasons why I choose, to speak to people on this platform like you that have this most random background that just melds get together to become this subject matter expert in whatever you decide to fabricate for your life, right? So that's one of the goals here, is to really look at all aspects of STEAM, whether it's art or any kind of other dynamic in science, physics, mathematical sciences, things like that, and to really push the focus and try to get young women, young individuals. I mean, this platform is all inclusive, but young individuals to really focus and hone in on their STEM prospects. So, none the wise, it's absolutely my pleasure to have you on here. And I mean, I'm gonna go on the record and say, if you get me to draw, it's gonna be a stick figure sideways, and I'm gonna put a curly tail on the end, and that's my cat. So
I love
I
it.
cannot draw to save my life. So my dependability lies on people like you. So thank you, because I don't have that talent. I promise. You're terrible draw. So let's go ahead and move to a little bit of the focus, because we've got a special program, and I'm just gonna throw this in there. As we're talking through the Q&A session and things like that, we have some of her artwork that we're going to share with you all today, and I'm going to let you know that some of it does have a little bit of a copyright aspect, but we've been covered for that. She's made sure that we've got permissions and everything, so we are able to yield to the copyright restrictions, and we're able to focus on that individual aspect. Also, they're also going to be listed in the description in the show as well. So if you want to look these people up, please do. And if you want to reach out to Mary, please also reach out to her, because her information will be linked in the description as well for this show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into inspiration and abstract art and all things glorious endeavor creativity. So, first off, Mary, can you tell us about your journey into scientific illustration? Like, what drew you into this field, and how did you gain an an inspiring focus on putting you into illustration today?
Yeah, it's been a very winding road. I'm going to start out with that. You probably picked that up on my little bio. And I think, and just kind of like to preface where this is going to go, I think for a lot of my answers, I'm going to kind of focus more on the journey and some, the hiccups and the failures and how those have really actually like shaped where I'm at today. And, just it's all intertwined, right? So, starting out though, I don't know how I remember this because I have a terrible short-term memory, but I remember when I was like in first grade, I really wanted to be a paleontologist. And I remember one of my friends, current friends still, we knew each other way back then. He thought I was kind of a jerk because I would use these big words like paleontology when I'm in first grade and had no business even knowing how to pronounce that word. But I knew dinosaurs were super cool. And that was where I wanted to go at that point. I think that was maybe the year Jurassic Park came out, or maybe, around that time, right? I had not seen the movie, so of course at that age. But, so that really kind of started the trend. From there, it was a lot of more scientifically sort of geared professions that I wanted to look into. I wanted to be a vet for a long time. And then in like middle school, high school, I wanted to be a marine biologist and an oceanographer. And that was well before I like developed this crippling fear of scuba diving. So I'm glad that didn't work out. But I know, not a fan. I went scuba diving and I ended up busting some capillaries in my eyelids. So I would not have survived in the scuba world. Yeah. So, it was all very like scientifically oriented, but I had never really considered an art career at that point. It was really the middle of high school, I think, that the Savannah College of Art and Design came by. Several art colleges came by. It was like recruiting period, right? So
Right.
they stopped by and they gave their spiel, and I had taken art lessons outside of school for quite a while, several years, and I always took art classes in school because those were just the most fun to do. And it really resonated with me when they came in and they just gave the overview of the different possibilities, some of their alumni and their successes. And that's when you get those really big eyes, like, I can make a living at this. This is, huh. And so that is really what kind of got me into it. I, packed up my bags, took out a massive student loan, and headed down to Georgia and went to art school. And I started the program not sure exactly where I wanted to go or where I really saw myself. I was in the general illustration program. I had originally thought of maybe doing something with a sequential art minor, which, if you're unfamiliar with that term, is it's like a panel-based art, so comic books, graphic novels, that sort of genre. And so I was just taking these illustration classes, and I was having a blast. It was a lot of fun, but I didn't really connect to any one specific kind of topic that was in that field. And it wasn't until I want to say it was early junior year, it might have been late sophomore year, but they offered this intro into scientific illustration class for the next semester. And I was thinking on it today, actually. I don't remember if I took it because I thought the class sounded interesting or because one of my favorite professors was teaching it. I feel like it was the professor aspect.
Probably a professor.
Yeah, yeah. I love the class that I took with him before, and he was teaching this one, and I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's give it a shot. This sounds like fun. And it like everything kind of just like connected at that point that I didn't have to try to be novel and different with this visual solution to an editorial prompt or a brand logo or that sort of thing. I never really grasped that more kind of abstract thinking, I'll say, I guess, of that problem solving element that illustration provides clients a lot. And so it was really nice. This scientific illustration newfound genre to me had some structure and some requirements. Like, you had to be smart about what you were putting onto paper. You couldn't just say like, oh, I'm going to draw a barn owl and it's going to have purple feathers. Like, there's some parameters that need to be met.
Right.
So
Boundaries.
yeah, exactly. And now that I'm older, I guess, I've realized those I thrive with like those boundaries. So it was definitely just the right avenue for me to go down. And so that's really what started it. And then from there, I ended up taking this really awesome class called Constructive Dinosaur Anatomy, which I'm pretty sure is just the coolest class ever. And that connected me with the owner of a dinosaur museum in the Rocky Mountains. And I worked there for an internship in the winter and then again in the following summer. And it just kind of like spiraled from there. I got connected with authors and editors through various classes or through these people that I met along the way. And yeah, it's kind of like the rest is history sort of thing, if you will.
Well, so I hate to caveat and pivot, but and I'm sure probably a lot of people don't know, most of your science museums are usually owned by some type of institutional or federal based program. But you mentioned that you ended up talking to an owner of one in an
Yes.
area.
Yes. So that's a really good comment. So it was a privately owned museum. So it not federally funded or anything like that. He was just a passionate fossil hunter who ended up accumulating enough money that he could, and fossils, that he could open up this really nice resource center that had it was a lot of his love was fossil fish, which I always thought was interesting because that's like, I don't know, I didn't even think about fossil fish, but the whole
Right.
interior region of the US was a shallow ocean at one point. And so there's just like out in that area, that's they would go on these digs, week-long digs, and come back with these um uh the, the big one is called Xiphactinus, and it's just this giant, it can be giant, bony fish. So yeah, so it is a different type of museum. It was very, it was definitely like a for-profit, I guess you would probably consider it, right? But it was a really great setup. It was super accessible to everyone. Really great specimens that they had there. So, and it was cool because I was there as a reconstruction artist, and they had a window from the museum gallery where all the specimens are set up back into the production room. And so we would actually work on creating these cast bones or skeletons or fossils, anything really. And so we would cast them out of resin, and then we would texture them and paint them to appear to be real fossils. And then these would end up going in private collections, or they could even potentially go into museums, because if you think about it, bone, once it's fossilized, is so heavy that a
Yeah.
lot of those really amazing fossils that you see in museums, I don't want to say a lot, but at least some of them, they're part real fossil and then they're part reconstruction, because it's either not a complete fossil, bone skeleton set, or it's just the sheer weight. Like Sue's head would never be able to stay up on her body in Chicago. Sue the T-Rex, for anyone who
Right.
has the name.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, and these are things that, so I pride I pride this series on giving the nit and gritty, not the pretty performed piece. So these are things that like you wouldn't hear that, okay, well, there's museums that are owned by private collectors and things like that. So that's a good caveat. I like that. That's a good caveat. So okay, well, I mean, let's keep the same energy. So how did you how did your early experience shape your interest in blending art with science? Because I mean, and I'm just gonna like caveat this for a little bit. A lot of people don't think that art or sculpture or any kind of like any embedded art, like real focused art, can be a scientific measurement or a scientific frame. So, in your experience, how have you blended art with science?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good question. And it's interesting that we do look at these two fields so separately sometimes because it's I almost feel like you can't have one without the other. So the answer I have for this question is a little sideways because I'm going to take it back to when I was really little, but I kind of want to come back to the full question. So
Okay.
the what started, I guess, my interest. So I took these art lessons outside of school, and I did this pencil drawing of a kangaroo rat. It was very large, and it was very realistic for a 10-year-old hand. And it was accepted into this art show that the art instructor put on locally, and it didn't win anything. It was like an honorable mention sort of situation.
How dare they?
But yeah,
Like,
it's funny. I brought the drawing in for show and tell because I was still at that age where we did show and tell in my fourth grade class. And I know another friend was like, "You didn't draw that," and I was like, I did though." He was like, "I don't believe you," and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry, I drew this." And so it's like it's kind of funny that you're at that age where it might be more interesting to draw like dragons or princesses or something a little bit more mystical and made up, and like I'm over here in someone's basement like working away on this giant kangaroo rat that I was like, it must be perfect. So that's kind of like early, like you could tell it was, realism was kind of the route that I was definitely going to be taking. And the scientific illustration was a really natural segue from that. I don't want to say you don't need to know how to work in realism to be a scientific illustrator, but it definitely helps. Definitely helps. But the comment you made about, a lot of people will look at these two topics kind of as separate entities. And that fine art, I kind of think is kind of what you're thinking with that can't necessarily be considered scientific art. I find that it's really interesting because like you can go all the way back to Da Vinci and the Vitruvian Man and all that stuff, and like that
right,
is some just stunning craftsmanship, and it's also very scientific.
right.
um and I always find personally, I find that the more complicated the subject matter, or maybe the more abstract the subject matter too, the more engaged I am personally when there's a really well done piece of art associated with it. And I think that's really big for, in general, scientific illustration to be successful, is to be engaging. And it's you're always just seeing a full oil painting of the T-Rex ripping open this stegosaurus or whatever, just the whole thing. Like that's going to interest you, that's going to pique your interest, and you're going to want to go learn more about that. Maybe the dinosaurs, or maybe there's a really cool plant that the artist put in there. Like there's something about that that's going to make you want to go learn more and discover for your own. And I think that's what is just really awesome about scientific illustration in general, but these really like, I'll say like hardcore art style that some people use with their scientific illustrations and artwork.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah,
and you think about like just regular studies in just a classroom. If you're looking at a biology book and they say, "Oh, well, a
definitely.
heart," the first thing you think about is the heart shape, the heart
Right.
shape, that heart shape.
Yep.
You don't think about the pumping organism that has, this apex at the bottom and has all of the features, the actual ventricles and things like that, that
Yep.
actually function this organ as part of an actual organ system. You don't think that.
Right.
So early on, before there was, mass communication of textbooks, art was the way to illustrate that
Yep.
to scientists that are globally integrating into this process, this scientific method, all these things that came out, DNA, things like that. And I think that these conversations are definitely need to be had, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, art doesn't really belong in STEM," but you can't really have STEM without art, because you can't
Right.
visualize something in someone else's
Yeah.
head.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that makes sense. But yeah, I jumped into that because somehow I got wrapped into the yes,
That's
we
okay.
will. Like I'm holding up my picket sign, like we will include
Yeah.
art. So so
Absolutely.
excuse me while I solidify this conversation. So okay. So what challenges did you face when starting out in scientific illustration? Like, can you give us a couple of
I
things
sure
that
can.
pop into your hand? Yeah, no, I can. I absolutely. Okay, go ahead.
The challenges is where the good stuff is, I feel like, in this conversation, probably. So, um, the biggest challenge that I feel like I still suffer from to a certain extent, but at the time that I started out in the scientific illustration field, biggest challenge for me was time management. And that's maybe not something that you would think of right off the bat. You might think, oh, well, what about making contacts and actually getting work? And it's like, those are also important and definitely challenges that need to be worked through, because, it's all part of the process. But if you can't commit yourself to be accountable for the work that you're going to do, because if you get it, and this is like, I'm not speaking from experience or anything like that. If you get a contract that needs, let's say, 200 illustrations done in the span of 4 years, we'll say, maybe it was 2 years, 2 years, you're like, oh, no problem. I got 2 years. But then a year goes by and you're like, oh, I've only done sketches. And then another 6 months goes by and you're like, oh, I was supposed to send like a 75% progress. And you let all those people down that were in your corner because you didn't know how to manage your own crap. And so, like, that was definitely my biggest challenge, was just understanding what needed to go into managing myself and making sure that I was successful. So, I think that's something too, that, like, if any universities are out there listening, like, please make sure there's a point in your self-promotional class for artists to, really work on time management. But, I got extremely lucky early on, that I was able to make solid connections. I've always, tried to put myself out there even when it's maybe not comfortable. And so I got these connections that got me these industry jobs. I think I signed my first publication contract when I was still an undergrad. So I think I was a senior when I signed it.
Wow.
And right, yeah, like okay, well, that's not usual. But then from there, like, that's all the, you've got, what is it, the pie in the sky or something like that, eyes for just the excitement. And then when the real work starts kicking in, that's when you need to figure out how you're going to make yourself shine, because
Yeah.
yeah, it is so easy. And just in general, it's so easy to get burnt out on things. And, it's important to figure out how to not let that happen, and definitely setting those milestones and, being accountable for your work, it will help you, get through that. So, it's funny that that's like the biggest challenge that I would say, versus, oh, hey, being an unproven artist, and going out there and trying to get work. But that's, yeah, that's definitely the biggest one. I think from a general standpoint, though, one of the greatest challenges with scientific illustration in the art world in general is that there are so many talented people out there. There are
Yeah.
so many talented people, and this might sound, I don't mean for this to sound controversial in any way, but it's so easy to become talented now. You have access to these free programs. Like everyone's got LinkedIn. Maybe you've got LinkedIn Learning. You can learn graphic design. You can learn basic illustration. You can learn Adobe software. There's so many great. You can take classic class. Right? Yeah,
Me.
Adobe is like a necessity. Everyone on this planet probably needs to know at least a few
I use
Adobe.
Illustrator, so I
Yes.
definitely
Yeah.
understand and
Yeah.
yeah, I deeply that's a point that is definitely something that everybody probably needs to do. Even running, like, I don't know, running this show, the artistry behind it was
Yeah.
one of the things that I really focused on because I wanted to make it known that that is something that we're focusing on wholeheartedly in this program. Not so much as science, but the art behind it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
100% behind you.
Yeah. So it's like you've got all these people who are just, proficient in so many things. Everyone's amazing, and so standing out is a really tough challenge for the industry. Because if you've got a unique style or something, that's maybe just a little different somehow, you might stand out more than the person next to you. But if you don't, and that's okay if you don't have a really unique style, you just need to be more tenacious and you need to figure out how you're going to make your voice heard in this sea of very talented
Everyone.
noise
Yeah,
around you.
right.
So it's
Okay.
tough to, getting past all that, staying positive, keeping that inner critic down and out of the picture. It's yeah, lots,
Right.
yeah.
Self-demoralizing
Yeah,
and
right.
the whole thing of what I forget what they call it now. It's
Imposter
not considered
syndrome.
right. I was going to say self-sabotage, but
Oh,
some of
right.
those
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
Right. So, yeah, we're our own worst critics. I mean, even
Okay.
even if you're not in artistry, some of the things that we do in science is like, did I do that research right? Nobody's going to
Mhm.
read my research. No one's going to care what I'm doing.
Yep.
Um, it's in every field. So we're here to tell you it's in every field,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I get it. So okay, well, I mean, so we did bring in some of your artwork and artistry. So we are going to start pointing out some of these things. But while we're doing that, and I'm going to throw some extra ones in here for flavor. What are what are some of the key milestones in your career that you feel have defined your path? And I know we have pinpoints, but I'm gonna throw some extra ones in here just for the cats. Okay.
Yeah, so this is gonna kind of link together that crazy bio at the beginning, I think. So, the first key milestone was really getting a response from, I'm gonna call it like a cold call poster marketing project that we had the paleontology life. He's a really awesome guy. So I illustrated this book with him, and then from there I ended up going. He wanted to have me illustrate another book with Princeton University Press, so I worked on that book where some of these illustrations are from. The first book ended up getting transferred over to Columbia University Press, I think, because our editor retired. And then I ended up doing another book with Columbia University Press, totally separately, but they reached out. So that was like that first response from an editor was definitely a huge milestone for me. And then I'm not sure if it's shown up or not, but the Field Museum was another very key milestone for me because that has always been like my favorite natural history museum. Being a Midwest girl, that's just like it for me. So I ended up getting to work a summer at the Field Museum after straight up Indiana Jones style, like just aisles and aisles of these cases that you can pull out, and get your fossils and bring them over to the table. And that was just like a dream come true for me. And then most recently is going to be the milestone of finding success in combining paleo and scientific art with my newest favorite hobby of knitting, which sounds kind of odd. Like, why would knitting come up in, a STEAM sort of discussion, but it's been just this amazing blend for me of this of trying to make these illustration or these designs on these patterns as technically complex as I can while still being simple enough for the average person to work through and have fun doing. And that's been just really gratifying. That these it started with this dinosaur fossil pattern, as you know, just dinosaurs. That's my theme, I guess. And seeing, I mean, it's been downloaded thousands of times. And so there are like thousands of people potentially across the world making this
The
pattern.
pattern,
Because,
yeah.
yeah, because it's dinosaurs. And it's just like, I've gotten, people have reached out about how excited their kid was with this, that, oh, the Stegosaurus is their favorite dinosaur. Thank you so much for, and it's just like getting to see some of that, I don't know, like creativity and curiosity sort of get ignited in these people and the recipients of these patterns has been just really cool. And it's I don't know, like I said before, it's just been really gratifying. And I feel like it's been a really nice intersection for me because I still get to use my art skills and I still get to geek out on some of these science things, but I'm not putting myself in a position to fail or be under the pressure that I just couldn't handle before. And so I'm actually like really enjoying myself now.
Yeah,
And I
I
think,
mean, it's a passion project at the end of the
yeah,
day, and it still quantifies the relevance of science and the
right.
activity of drawing in that artistry
Mhm.
mechanism into science. That's like I could only dream of finding, things like that in my life that really pull in the coping mechanisms that I have, like dance and
Mhm.
drama and things like that. Not art because I can't draw, but but things that are very seamlessly awe defining for me, and then
Yeah.
pulling them in the side. I can't dance on point in a lab coat. That's kind
Well,
of
I bet you could.
it's it's doable, but is it safe?
Maybe not advisable, but doable.
Not advisable. I would not advise doing this in a lab, but it's possible. Um,
Yep.
and just so the audience knows, we'll pause in iterations, and I'll pull up the 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 photos and everything for her graphics. And just so you kind of know too, as we're pulling the photos, I'll let you know, and then I'll probably like ask you a question,
Yeah.
like so that way we don't run over it, because I'm thinking that we might be off a little bit on the conversation yield for the pieces. But I want to go back
Okay.
to the knitting just so people can see those,
Sure.
and then we'll move to another quick question. So okay, we're back. I hate I have to do that. I feel like that should have been fixed, but okay, Sarah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like artistic inspiration. Um, what artists or scientists, if you have some, have influenced your work the most, and how do they inspire your artistic vision?
So this is definitely a combined answer, I think. So from a time period standpoint, my favorite time period in art is the Art Nouveau period, specifically artwork by Alphonse Mucha. And so that it's I always find it interesting. When I back in the Tumblr days, that doesn't date me or anything. I would be more active with posting my artwork on there. And someone, I'm pretty sure it happened multiple times, but someone was like, "I love your Art Nouveau dinosaurs," and I'm like, did not even realize I was doing that. But then, like, actually looking at some of the style choices, I would do like a heavier outline, and it was a lot of smooth, curves and things like that. I was like, oh yeah, I see it. So it's funny how that creeps in to the work that I do. Even honestly, I feel like anything that I do, it kind of creeps itself in there because I just aesthetically lean towards that sort of style. But there are some amazing paleo artists and artists in general out there that are definitely big inspirations for me. And I've gotten to meet both of the gentlemen I'm gonna list off, which is just like, again, check that
Yes.
off my bucket list. First one's Mark Hallett. And so I don't know if you are familiar with this book that was published. I think it was in 1990. I was looking it up the other night to make sure I got the title right. So it's called Dinosaurs, A World View. And it's like a giant bleeping book. And it has several artists in it that contribute to this book. And he's one of them in there. And he's just, the way that he captures the scenes and the lighting and everything like that is just really beautiful. And he's just one of the nicest guys ever. So it's like, to be, so encouraging. And like, we corresponded via email for a while as well. When I was starting out, like, the people who are successful want to see others succeed. I love that about so many different industries. And the second person that is an artist that definitely influenced my work and has always just been a huge impact is James Gurney, who wrote and illustrated the Dinotopia series, which again, kind of kicking it back to the 90s. It was also a TV show at one point. I don't know that I watched the TV show, to be honest, but he does plein air drawing or painting, which is essentially like he takes his canvas out into the world and he just paints from life. And the way that he can depict mist on a sunrise, or like the colors and the lighting of this man's work is just double chef's kiss. It's
I
just so
really
beautiful.
wish we now I feel like we probably should have included some of that artistry, but then of course we have to call
Right, the
this
whole
man
copy
and
thing.
right, call him
Yeah,
and make sure he's good and Lord, the time, right?
I
Um,
know. But I know James Gurney for a fact is on Instagram. So if you're interested in seeing his work, anyone out there, go check him out. I don't know if Mark Hallett's on any socials. So,
okay,
but
we could always check and include it in the description for people that are interested. I have a few people that I know that may come back and watch this on maybe a replay, and they're avid, artists, and still to this day, like they used to draw in my biology classes, but but I know that they would really love this conversation, and it would validate what they thought all along. Like I belong in science, just not this way.
right.
Um, yeah. So yeah. Okay. Well, so let's see. How do you incorporate elements of both traditional and modern art styles in your scientific illustrations?
Yeah. And so I think soon there's going to be a sea lion and a llama on everyone's screens.
I mean, we
They're
can
two.
show that now if you want.
Oh, however it works out. I was just gonna say I picked those two for this question specifically because kind of like the lighting elements. So from a traditional art standpoint, Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, those have always been uh, my favorites whenever I go to a museum. And I like the Art Nouveau, I bring elements of those styles subconsciously into a lot of my art. So it's like the dramatic lighting, that llama he's lit. Idealized subjects, exaggerated curves. It's really just like almost trying to like beautify whatever the thing is that I'm trying to draw, which I mean, to a certain extent is, maybe not necessarily the best thing if you're trying to be like really scientifically accurate, but it's like a
Right.
subconscious, I smooth out the edges a little bit, but yeah, so those are definitely, and from the modern elements, I do a lot of digital work these days. So I would say that's kind of how blending the more traditional style with the more modern execution, I guess would be probably how that would kind of answer that question best.
Right. I imagine you putting the magnificent aura glow around like a lung
Okay.
or something
Okay.
that makes no sense. It's not lifelike at all. So it kind of has to be in another type of concept when it comes to artistry. But for those that are interested of what she was depicting for you, here is the visual. I'm gonna put it up for about a few seconds, and then we'll bring in the next question, just so we know that we're not missing any of the audio feed. All right. I think you all got an awakened experience, an aura like projection from that beautiful graphic that I would never be able to construct myself. Um, so, so our next question, of course, is going to talk about interdisciplinary nature aspects. So, how do you balance the demands of scientific accuracy with artistic creativity in your illustrations?
Yeah, it's a blend of things and kind of being adaptable here. So I think scientific accuracy should come first. You know, that's really the end goal, is to be scientifically accurate. But how you get there could be a little style dependent. So some subject matter lends itself to be a little bit more creative. Like if you are painting a reconstructed environment from an ancient era, or you're conveying how light travels in an interesting way, you know, that could be done a little bit more creatively than I'll say something super rigid or diagrammatic, you know, whatever. It's a little less
Right.
interesting, we could say. And then there are subjects that require more of a no nonsense approach. For example, I helped out with we'll get to the medical illustration in a little bit, but I help out this local medical illustrator in some of her pieces. She is focused on creating exhibits for court cases. So a lot of it is injury, accidents, potentially medical malpractice, you know, these sorts of things where the jury or the judge needs to know, or whoever's settling the case needs to know what happened in the most direct, easiest to digest way
Right.
that has all the facts right there. So, for example, I helped her out with this illustration that showed where a gas pipe connection was missed. You know, the client doesn't want to see a whole scene there. They want to know the clearest, easiest way to why that house blew up. And so it's like that's where there's, you know, you don't need to be, and I don't want to say you don't need to be creative there, but you need to rein back maybe what might be your own aesthetic style and be like, this is
Right.
not needed right now. I'm going to adjust and adapt to what is needed. And, you know, so it's kind of like a give and take on, you know, when you can really like just pull out all the stops and when to pull it back and just be a little bit more literal.
Yeah. And I mean that makes sense. Like realistic approach versus something that looks almost non-lifelike, and
Right.
the division of the two. Um, so how do you ensure that your illustrations are both engaging and educational for diverse audiences?
Yeah. I think art and scientific art is engaging on a basic level. That's just me. Anyway,
Period.
so
Right.
uh, it's like it's one of those things where, you know, you read a description of a dinosaur, and that's like it's one thing, you have to create that in your own head, and then you see the skeleton in a museum, and you can now start to get an idea of what you're working with. But once you actually see an artist's rendition of that dinosaur in its natural environment, like that's when it's real. So that's that's what I that's what I try to go for. I'm sure that's like such a basic answer. You know, but it's like I try to in general, and I don't do a whole lot of scenes. A lot of the artwork that I do and have always done have been more like vignettes, more than anything else. So really for me, it's kind of trying to use color and shape and make these things that I'm trying to get across be as quickly recognizable by the viewer, that
Right.
they get the information that they need, but it's still simple, but it's, you know, has little interesting nuggets that might interest them to like learn more about whatever it is they're looking at. So it's interesting. I think there's two ways to look about it. These really complicated, you know, pieces of art that are just like it's like a religious moment when you look at it sort of thing, and it's still
Right.
science. And then there's these more simpler ways that, maybe it's that pop of color that brings you in and engages you, catches your eye. Now I've learned about, I was just going to say something dumb. I'm not going to go there because I'm going to sound stupid, but like something, so we'll say something chemistry. I don't know chemistry. Electrons and neutrons and protons and how they do their dance. Now I know it's bright, it's colorful. And so I think there's different ways to engage. There's either, depending on the need and the publication or the venue that the artwork is being viewed. So,
Yeah, the first thing that I thought about when you were describing that was chemistry, right? Because chemical changes, reactions are very um they can be, I guess, like illustrated, but the actual scientific engagement behind it has to be almost sketched because, and this is for people that do or don't know, organic chemistry is everything that is, you know focused on one aspect, and then you have inorganic chemistry. Well, one has the composites of carbons that are always there, and if you're anything like me, I had a very animated organic chemistry professor that showed us how these electrons and neutrons and all these pieces of this organism kind of swayed and danced. But the way that he did it, he had to use like colored chalk or some type of depiction to show us. And then the partition between the original aspect and then the transition and then the end aspect, it had to be art stricken because these things are just not seen in normal everyday life. You have to depict it with art. So that's the first thing that came to my head when you said, oh, some type of chemical compound or some type of elemental, strategy. It has to be illustrated in a way to where you see the variation or the changes, and the color aspect is one of the things that I thought about. That's the first. I
yeah.
was like, oh, organic chemistry. Oh, I love that class, I swear.
I took chemistry through my junior year of high school, and I was like, I cannot. I
It
was
is
done. But I
required.
married a chemist. My husband's an inorganic chemist.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry. I love organic chemistry so much.
oh, that's funny.
Stricken with fear. Now that I
No,
know, like he's gonna come into
we're
the
we're gonna listen to this later.
we're gonna put in some chemistry, some elemental chemistry in here. Like please, please don't grade me. So so could you we're gonna show Brachiosaurus.
Yes.
Oh yes. All right, dinosaurs. We're gonna show a Brachiosaurus real quick. But then we're gonna go into our next question for Mary in a second. So let's show that amazing feat. Hold on. And we're back. So I want to. I don't want anybody to miss any of this.
Oh yeah.
Could you could you share a project that was particularly challenging or rewarding for you, and what in this project made it stand out for you?
Yeah, so we're gonna go the rewarding route on this answer since everything else is a challenge. So that Brachiosaurus is my rewarding project, and I did this drawing. That's all colored pencil. If that means anything to anyone, but
It means everything to
I
me. How? How?
yeah, and what's funny? I haven't picked up a colored pencil in a while. I just found them. We moved, and I'm like, I should probably draw something. It's been a minute. So that I did that drawing in between undergrad and grad school to kind of like beef up my portfolio because I was applying to CSUMB for their science illustration program. And this was in my Tumblr days. And so I did it in pieces. So this was one where um, I drew the skeleton first, and then I put a piece of tracing paper over the skeleton figured out my muscle connections, transferred that tracing onto a different piece of paper, did, so they're three separate actual drawings, and I put them
Okay.
together in Photoshop. So I posted on Tumblr the skeleton and the musculature system. And I nice, casual following, whatever, it was just for personal fun. And I wake up one morning and that one post had like over 15,000 likes on it. And I was just like, holy smokes. Okay. And I had all these like messages and all these new followers. And I was like, I don't know what just happened. So it was like a huge, um, I don't know, like personal, it was personally rewarding, right? Like it very much satisfied the millennial inside of me, with this gratification that I got out of it. But what was kind of interesting, actually, I thought, especially now looking back at it, was that in the post I described, I was basing the muscles in the neck off of a giraffe because, I had this animal anatomy book and I was like, oh, that makes sense. It's got, like, I don't know of any other animal that has that long of a neck. I was like, I guess I could
Yeah.
maybe go for like a snake, but that's really, I mean, that's like a different sort of thing. So I explained some of this in the post, and someone sent me a message and was like, why would you make that assumption? That's dumb. There are no, like, and it just like kind of like called me out on this. And I was like, I I got myself all situated and I wrote a very nice diplomatic response about, well, from the standpoint that we don't have muscle, soft tissue fossils, and there, as far as I know, are no current real, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but any current comparable reptiles that have this sort of, structure to them. And I was like, also, based on research, it seems like, sauropods might be mesothermic, so they really might have more in common with mammals than they really do with reptiles. And some, so I was like trying to be really like diplomatic and like explain kind of my thinking, whether or not it's correct thinking, that's, I pretty much was like, I am no scientist, but this is what I did. And so it was kind of cool that like a drawing that I did created like a little bit of dissent, but it was like, it was very civil dissent. I wasn't like, people weren't like calling me dumb or anything. I think they really didn't call me dumb. It was just kind of implied.
But the thing is, like the explanation you just gave me was nothing but scientific. Like just to prove your point to this, whoever this is, I hope they're watching so they understand that they have struck a chord. But but they know like there was thought process into this,
Right.
and not
Yeah.
only thought
Yeah.
process, like there was a significant amount of research to make sure that your theoretical project was
Right.
efficient enough, one, to publish and be scrutinized, two, you could talk on the subject
Yeah.
and be scrutinized all you want to, but there are receipts for this, sir or ma'am. Sir or
Exactly.
ma'am, there's
Yeah.
receipts. So aside from all of that, you went real scientific rogue, and I'm so proud of it. So I salute you for that one. But that was awesome because I don't think whoever that was expected you to come with that type of fire.
I don't think so.
So
Mm-mm.
it's
I
absolutely
totally
fine.
like, I kept it anonymous, but I totally publicly posted it. I was like, all right, everyone.
Dump. And just for your edification, now that I know that your capabilities include social media support and drawing the attention from the media masses, we might need to get you in on this AWIS thing so you can pull in some more platform overnight skills that you did for your
Oh,
graphics.
I wish I knew how that happened. I truly do not. Oh, it got featured on, it's like, they used to have like, or they probably still do. They have like that dashboard radar. And I think Tumblr just like randomly picks something to feature. That's where it got featured on that thing. But I don't know how that got picked.
I mean, however it did, I'm glad because that's cool.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
very rarely, like I very rarely talk to people that do like viral intent, and that sounds pretty viral. For it to be Tumblr, that's a viral. So
right, yeah.
that's pretty significant. That needs to be like in your portfolio at the top. I'm viral for this non-rudimentary element of a dinosaur depiction. So you're welcome. Well, I'm going to do maybe one more question, and I think we're going to take a little bit of a break, probably about 3 minutes, and then come back and finish up the spiel because I think, like, I wouldn't take a break if it was up to me, but I figured people would want to do a bio break, so I'll be nice. Um, so let's dig into techniques and tools real quick. So, what are some of the key tools and techniques you use for your work? And you can, specify whether or not you've had any new techniques that you've come up with, recently that significantly impacted any of your creativity process, and just let us let us know how that whole concept is. And before, I'll give you like 2 seconds to think about that because I want to throw the pictures in that were identified for this question. So 2 seconds. Okay, so I hope everybody's memory is phenomenal. Um, so go ahead and if you could with your response, please, ma'am.
Yes, absolutely. So this will be a little bit of like an evolution of Mary's use of tools. Because when I went to when I went to college, I was like, I was like colored pencil, right? That was my jam. I was not going to pick up a digital tablet or do anything on the computer. I was like, that's not real art because you don't know anything when you're 18 years old and you haven't been exposed to the real world of art and the industry. So now it's kind of funny. I was like so adamant then. Now 10 years after graduating from grad school, I kind of mentioned earlier, I can't even remember the last time that I've picked up a paintbrush for something that was other than like to do an abstract painting to like put up in the house kind of thing, so just more like fun stuff.
Right.
So I think it's important to be familiar with both. And, maybe we gravitate more towards one, what digital, or maybe we gravitate more towards traditional media. But the key tools right now that I use is definitely going to be Photoshop, Illustrator, and to a lesser extent InDesign. I use that for plenty of other things in my life, but not so much for scientific illustration. But those are like the three big ones to me. And if I could learn more tools that I think are really important right now, that I feel like I've kind of missed the boat on a little bit, just because I kind of like took a step back for a while from the scientific illustration sphere. Procreate, everything I see with people using Procreate, and this is this like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure that's an Apple product though. That's for your iPad, I
I think
think.
it is.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't
So
use
we're
it, but I think it is. Yeah.
right. Okay. We're kind of an Android family over here, though I've had Apple products in the past, but I know. So but like I've seen the paintings that come out of Procreate, and I'm like, this is amazing. And it just seems like it's a little bit more user friendly in a way. It's, so like that's a tool that if I could learn, I would really love to learn. And then Premiere and After Effects. Those are the two other Adobe products that I think are like key for just to have like a general knowledge of, because you never know when, to be able to animate something or create a little bit of movement will really just like elevate your piece to the next level. But I only learned those to a basic level in grad school. So those would also be in my bucket of would love to learn more, because I think they're definitely important tools to know. But yeah, those are right now really the key tools for me are going to be Photoshop and Illustrator. So
Okay. I mean, those are some that I know I've used. I'm gonna look up Procreate, and I think was something light. I forget what it is. There's a couple of them in the Adobe suite that I've used, but
yeah.
for other things like graphic stuff. Um, but yeah, that I mean, I'm gonna have you list some, and we'll put them in the
Yep.
description so that people can go and look them up. And if they have, you know, some type of digital design that they want to do, they'll go look those up and check them out for sure. Um, one more question. Skip. Well, we'll finish the techniques and tools questions. So how do you decide which medium, medium being like digital or traditional, to use for a particular project? Like in your infinite knowledge, how do you choose?
Oh. Um, my answer is going to probably sound like a bit of a cop out, I think. It really depends on what I'm going to be creating. I lean towards digital a lot more these days for a few reasons. One being there's no mess to clean up, which is great. I don't have a scanner at home, so I can't just like really easily scan in my, my drawings to tune them up and that sort of thing. But when I had more studio space, I'm a nice office now, but I actually like had, this setup, right? I was willing to stay up into the wee hours and do my watercolors and my colored pencils because like that's not, that's not a quick, it's not a quick love to
Right.
have color, I'll tell you. And I would lean a lot towards doing a watercolor base with a colored pencil detail. That's usually how I would get started. So I could like my skeletons would be like a lighter watercolor wash fill of all the bones. And then I would take my colored pencils and I would really like get those shadows and those highlights in there. Um, so it depends truly on the end result and then the subject matter. But so like at the same time, I struggle doing digital like scenes. So again, I kind of lean more towards the vignette side of thing from a digital standpoint. So the scenes are where I struggle because once I get outside of that subject matter that I'm trying to focus on, it starts to then to me look fake. And I don't like that. I don't like how that looks. It's just, because the speed painters that are out there that can make these amazing landscapes in like 2 minutes. Like I wish I had that ability because that's the kind of like background that I try to create and it looks clunky. So those sorts of illustrations I would lend more towards traditional because it's a little bit more to me it's a little bit more I can be a little tighter with it. And I don't know, I like really getting up in there, kind of thing.
Right.
And all that. But like on the flip side, if it's a medical device or something that needs like really clean straight lines or maybe needs like really perfect symmetry or something like that, then I definitely lean more digital because it's just so much easier and more efficient to create something a little bit more along those lines in a program like Illustrator, and then you color it in Photoshop. And so that's it. It definitely depends on the type of subject that I need to make.
Okay. I have a question, but I don't think I'll throw it in there. I do. I feel like I want to throw a question in there. Have you ever done any type of artistry or been, requested to do artwork for like a patent or anything like that, like patent work?
Um, Not specifically a patent. The closest I've gotten was for the NO device that I think is later down the line. That was for a friend of ours, was in his I don't know if it was PhD or his postdoc program. But it was for a academic paper. I don't
Okay.
believe that was sent to be patented though. But that's the
Okay.
closest I would have gotten.
Okay. Just wondering. That was something that literally just off the top of my head. I know that there's a lot of USPTO stuff. Like if you ever put, some type of medical device or something like that up for patent, you'd have to have like a actual picture to frame the references of the materials that you're describing. And I just wanted to know. It completely off topic. This is
Yep.
never before seen question. So that was a true answer. I apologize, Mary. I threw that out there. But I really wanted to know because that was something that just came to mind when you said the traditional versus the, digital piece. Um, got one more question and then we'll go to a quick break. Are there scientific tools or software that you believe every scientific illustrator should master?
Yeah. So this is, I think overall, my answer is probably going to be no, because I think depending on what you love, whether it's the traditional or the digital or combination, you you don't have to master every single thing. It's definitely good to like be knowledgeable and be able to work your way around some things. But I think there's so many different options out there that you could be a jack of trades and a master of none and still be like golden.
Right.
But that said, kind of going back to one of our earlier questions and answers, there are a few things that I think are really important to be really
Okay.
familiar with. The Adobe Suite, right? So Photoshop and Illustrator are definitely like the big two. I don't know how you could, even as a traditional artist, to be able to display it virtually now. I'm not quite sure how you would get by without knowing Photoshop or Lightroom.
Right.
Maybe that would be to adjust your levels. But if you need to clean up, I mean, Photoshop's the way to go. Um, InDesign, I think, is also a must, just from the standpoint that if you are going to be freelance, it's good to know how to set up and design documents. You're going to have your resume, your portfolio. You might be asked to do, to set up magazine spreads or, things like that for Nat Geo or whoever else. So I think that's definitely a really key program as well. From there, I think from there, it really is just like dependent on what style you have and what avenue you want to go down. Cause it's just, I mean, it's vast. So there's like some really cool 3D rendering tools that I don't even know all of them now, but I know ZBrush was a really big program in college. I think it might have been newer at that time. And so this might be maybe out of date now, but like programs like ZBrush that would allow you, they were used a lot in like the animation or visual effects departments, but they would trickle their way into like illustration and sequential art. And that's really great from like, if you're knowledgeable of that, you can almost build your subject in this 3D modeler, and then you've got the light, the form, everything right there. So then if you need to draw it or however else, you can essentially be looking at this thing as if it were right in front of you, versus this dinosaur that doesn't actually exist, or something like that you can't easily just have on your desk.
Right.
So those are really cool, but again, very like it's all dependent on like what route you go. Same thing I would say with like Premiere and After Effects, that they're definitely cool to know, and they could open doors for you, but again, maybe not required to
Okay.
master.
I mean, look, I'm you may not see it, but I'm keeping notes because I I am not an artist by far, but I will Adobe shop some things for you. And I mean, you've seen some of the creative aspects that I've gone through to make sure that this, the series has gone over full scale and really cute. So, I mean, I do have a little bit of a flair, not as much as Mary does, but definitely a little bit of it.
Flip the script. I could not do what you've done for this series, so
It was fun though. So that's the
that's
weird part.
important.
So, well, so we're going to take a little bit of a break, about 3 minutes, and then we're going to come back and talk about some challenges in the field that she might have had and some other aspects like career advice and things like that. So stay tuned, enjoy the 3 minute sesh, and we will be right back. And we're back. Funny how those 3 minutes go by so quick, right? um, so I think before we get started, I'm gonna make sure that we're good on audio. Mary, can you say something?
Hello.
Okay, perfect. We're good. See, I knew you had your veiled persona. I love it. Um, so, so we're gonna pick up with career advice and then punch into a couple of other things before we head out this evening. So, what advice would you give someone interested in pursuing a career in scientific illustration? And please do not hold any information back. Give us the full-fledged detail because we would love to know.
Yes. So this goes back to my we're learning from my failures today. So the there's gonna be a few things I hit here, but the biggest thing is to be prepared to put the work in. And not just that, but like make sure you have a thick skin. And I don't mean that in any sort of negative way, but a way of like learning from your failures and teach yourself how to receive critique constructively and positively. And because like, again, not that I would know personally, but once you are out there in that public realm, there will be people who don't like what you do. And it's inevitable. Even if you are so proud of what you did. In my situation, I was not extremely proud of what I did. And apparently that was very clear to critics. And I made the mistake of seeing a review on a book. And it cuts you down. And so it's important that if something does cut you down, that you find a way to say, all right, you know what? I acknowledge that comment. I am going to dissect that, figure out how I can be better for this next project or this next, illustration, whatever it is. So I think really just like that resilience and being adaptable and being not afraid to fail. I mean, I know that's such a cliche thing to say, right? But it's really important, especially
It's
in the
true.
in the
It's so
it,
true.
it's well in science too. I feel like that in any scientific or art, and there we go, they blend again. It's so important because how can you learn what doesn't work if you don't fail? It's like I feel like you learn more from what doesn't work sometimes than what does work. So it's that's definitely some of my biggest advice is and like legit, like be prepared to put the work in. And you might not get that connection right off the bat, or you might you might need to go travel to conferences, or you need to buy that time management book to figure out how you're going to set those deadlines for yourself to make sure that you hold yourself accountable. But yeah, it's so easy to, especially nowadays, and like, maybe I'm saying this again as like a millennial, but it's so easy to just give up and like pack up when something doesn't pan out the way that you want it to,
Right.
especially when you were so proud of whatever it is that you did, right? That's the worst. You're like, I put my heart and soul into this, and then no one saw it, no
Nobody
one
liked
cared.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just like, that's it, right? Just like nail the coffin, close, and bury me in the backyard. It's fine. We're done here. And it's important to learn from those hurdles. And maybe what I think and how that really like kind of affected how I got to where I am right now is, maybe you learned something about yourself in the process that you realize, you know what? I've always been going down this hallway. I've been opening these doors, but what if I jumped out that window instead? And let's see what's out there. And so you kind of go on this tangent, and it's still like how I got into the knitwear designing with these, more scientific, realistic subject matter for the main design component. Like I would have never gotten there had I not started out as a scientific illustrator. So, it's like it's all connected somehow. And it's really important to just when you get knocked down, just brush off your knees and get back
Yeah.
up and learn from it. And that's it. Like that is, I think, one of the single most important things about an artistic career is, especially with just all the competition out there, it's inevitable that you will fail. And it's so important that you learn from that failure and that's what makes it rewarding in the end. So
And I'm sure everybody that we look at, Rembrandt, Da Vinci, all these artists, um, Salvador Dali, I could name several artists. I'm sure they have sketch work that they've never publicly displayed. Um,
yeah. And Van Gogh, his whole life was a failure to like the public eye, right? And
right.
that's like some of the most iconic inspirational art that we all recognize and
Favorite.
immediately think of. And it's just like,
Starry Night is like literally my go-to. Like,
yep,
but I'm sure that didn't start off as Starry Night. It started off as something else. And I mean, Van Gogh has a lot of work that you recognize today, but I guarantee you, if you go through his archives or go through, somebody else's Michelangelo, somebody has archives where all of their work was not displayed, their early
right,
traces of work was not displayed. You only know Mona Lisa, the Scream,
right,
things like
exactly.
that.
Yep.
The melting clock factor. How many times has that gone
Right.
through a rendition to get to what it
Yeah.
was? So I mean, failure is inevitable. We learn it in the scientific experiment. You have to go through experiments to get to your conclusion, figure out what doesn't work, what did, and your results is what your conclusive effort was behind the experiments. And most of those were wrong. So, you know, art has its own hypothesis. It has its own
Yeah.
experimental values. It has its own results, and the conclusive effort is what the public sees. So
Yep. Right.
I just came up with that. You can take that and roll
I
with
love it. I love
it.
it.
You can take that and roll with it. And while we're on the subject of your knit structures, I want to pull up these other two because I think this stuff I couldn't possibly do it myself. I'm coming to your house and I'm going to get you to teach me. So just prepare for a weekend guest.
All right.
I'm gonna bring
We got
Christy.
room.
She has
We
no
got
idea,
room.
and let me just learn from you. So let's take a look at these really quickly. So hopefully, if you miss those, just go back and do the replay. We encourage it. Pause and look at them really detailed. Breathe in all of that art and that focus and that time, because that is one of the things that takes is time and effort and patience. A lot of people think that all these you just come out of the block and just know how to do these things. And that's not the case at all. I'm sure that took a lot of experimental effort behind it. So I think it's amazing. So I'm applauding you from way over here because I can't imagine doing it. It would come out horrible. But I'm learning. I'm going to learn. I promise you. Um, so, so how important is networking? Let's talk about networking because some of us would
Yeah.
love to be just introverts and stay at home and Netflix and Hulu and popcorn with jalapenos on top.
I'm gonna have to try
How
that. That sounds really good right now.
it is
Um,
so good.
oh,
But how is your networking in the field of scientific illustration?
it's definitely key. It is, it's very important. And it's, uh, I kind of mentioned this earlier, the whole being successful if, and I'm talking like specifically freelance. I'm not talking about having an established job at a museum or a publication or, you know, any organization where you get a
Right.
regular 8 to 5, 9 to 5 salary. For freelance illustration, it's really important. And it's kind of an equal parts, you know, glom of who you know, luck, and hard work. And they're all really like intertwined. So you can be a great artist and, you know, in your own contained sphere, but without putting yourself out there and introducing yourself to people who might be interested in your work, you may never get discovered. It's, you know, kind of, I feel like a little bit of a broken record. Like there's just so many talented people out there, and we're all on
Right.
social media now, and we all like it's all everything is so diluted, and there's not as much of that personal connection anymore between people, because we live through our screens, and so. actually going out to an event at a conference or any kind of social mix or whatever for at an organization that interests you. So if like I've got some recommendations later down the line, but the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators, for example, broad, all-encompassing group. They have regular events. Like that's going to be more finding your peers, and that's just as important as finding your potential clientele.
Right.
But it's key. I mean, it's so important. And like just thinking about different, maybe unexpected ways of networking, like maybe try sending out that postcard that you designed. Like I would be so thrilled to get a handwritten illustrated postcard from someone that was like, hey, I'm just starting out my career. I would love to, X, Y, and Z. And it's like that shows initiative. It shows, they're doing the research, trying to find the right contacts, that sort of thing. I know it probably gets lost in the mailroom for some of these giant organizations. So like it's kind of a crapshoot, but things like that, everything is just email and digital and, instant, not instant message, but direct message, it's like
Right.
getting that piece of paper could potentially, win you a job down the line. If someone is like, you know what, I remember someone actually like reached out with, this really interesting novel, booklet that you fold it out, and each different fold is a different little portfolio piece, like whatever. There's different ways that you can network and reach out to potential clients. That's not just an email, but email is also important. We would be dead
It
without email,
is.
but networking is so
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why, and I'm just throwing this in for just sheer guilt here, right? Um, that's one of the reasons why AWIS DC is really trying to focus on, doing a lot of mentorship programs and a lot of like networking events in person and on, virtual, because we never know. Like I'm having this conversation with you right now, but somebody watching can say, "Oh my gosh, I really need somebody to illustrate this novel that I'm working on, or this scientific dilemma that I can't get over. I gotta put this together, but maybe I could talk to her and she can fabricate what I'm trying to see visually because I just can't do it." So the
well. And
idea of these things, go ahead, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, like, just because it like right hooks onto the back of what you just said. Like to that point, even if you connect with someone, like let's say in this scenario, someone reaches out and is like, "Hey, I need this illustration." I might not be able to do it, but I know like 10 people who could. And it's the
Right,
same thing. It's like that's the value of networking, right? Is like creating that spider web of people who have your back, and like are
right.
interested in you, either to support you and help build up your career on either side of the spectrum. So that's huge, huge.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things that I would love to have all encompassed in our organization for sure. And I mean just broadly across like AWIS, on a national basis, but particularly because of like the DC area, like we have so many talented people here, and just to have that mesh network where somebody in the chapter says, "Oh, I remember this one person that does this in cybersecurity, or that does this in illustrative, conference, or I know she may have an individual that can, sketch out this thing that I'm trying to propose." Those type of networks, that's what I really want to bring to the forefront. So even us having this conversation, hopefully it yields that magnitude that I'm trying to envision for the organization. And I mean, we would love to have you back as like a guest to bring some more of your iterative pieces, because I think they're awesome. Like I started going through them last night before I implanted it. I'm just like, okay, I could never. Like I keep saying, I could never do this because I cannot draw. I just don't have the fingers for it. But I love that, as STEM, just technologists, STEM scientists, we are able to encompass things like art and medicine into the fold, because I mean, where would we be without y'all, and where would y'all be without us, right? So it's kind of a handful situation. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this conversation, because I'm sure someone, and I'm not gonna lie, it probably will be me when I get this dissertation started. I can't draw any kind of technical anything, and I will be knocking on your door like, please help me with this illustrative piece that I need to build for whatever computing network that I have to do, because I'm not going to pretend like I can do that in any Adobe anything. So just expect it. Um,
I'll be waiting for
yes, yes,
it.
and I will pay you handsomely. Okay.
Love it. That was all right. Perfect. Perfect.
Contracted. This is no freebies here. We do not do free work unless it's like for a nonprofit. But no, you
Right,
this
of
would be,
course.
yeah. So what skills do you think are essential for someone entering the field of scientific illustration today?
Yeah. So I feel like if you're set on being a scientific illustrator, you probably have some technical drawing skills already. It's, you probably wouldn't go that route if you didn't, right? So I think more importantly, so we'll kind of get away from the art part of it a little bit, but more importantly, problem solving skills is definitely important. Especially for instances where you have to like infer some of the details based on what limited information is maybe available to you. Maybe it's a, I keep coming back to like chemistry. I don't know chemistry well, but if it's right, some sort of reaction or a chemical compound or something that you physically cannot see, you have to solve that problem. How are you going to make something that's a little difficult to, comprehend, maybe difficult to see because it's so small, or it's, you can, or whatever, it's out however many light years away in space, and solve that problem to make it so that, like how we talked about earlier, that it's digestible and it's engaging to the end user or viewer, whoever's going to be you know regularly working with this illustration that you create. So problem solving skills are definitely key. And then I keep harping on this because this was my own just like Achilles heel, was time management skills. Just taking the time, taking your work seriously and taking the time to be serious about it.
Right.
And like I kind of mentioned before, like if time management is not taught in your curriculum, whether it's high school, college, whatever, in between, you're just taking classes on the side in between undergrad and grad school, whatever. Like get a book, just get a book, find what technique works best for you, because it's not just like writing out, and now I'm going to do this at this time and this at this time,
Right.
and I'm going to have this done here. It's like a whole psychological thing. So there's just so many different ways that you can just figure out how you're going to be best accountable to yourself, and that those two, problem solving and really just like personal accountability, are hugely important. I mean, they're life skills that are hugely important, but to be successful, these are where I found my biggest shortcomings in these two areas. So that's maybe why I'm harping on them a little bit more, because I'm like, if I had been better at this, maybe I would have found, a different level of success, or joy in the process, or whatever. But that's really, those two are definitely going to be highest on my list, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sure like that probably like, was kind of putting into focus a different kind of situation. It probably added more stress than necessary that took away from the regular artistic vibe that you probably had in the first place. And if you probably learned, earlier on, for all of the viewers that are listening to this, and take it for what you want, but time management is a thing across all all spectrums. So if you don't balance your time management skills, your deadlines are going to suffer, your time is going to be suffering, and then you cost organizations money if you're doing this non-freelance. Like that's a clock in clock out strategy, and you have to charge to certain concepts. And if you're charging money for something and you're not actually getting it done, then now you're displacing the company as itself. So yeah, learning that is a big focus. And it might be something that people are like, oh, that's a given. No, no, it is
Right.
not.
Right. I
It
tell you,
is
it is
not.
so easy. A quick little anecdote. I remember so I also took constructive animal anatomy, which was different. It was not dinosaur specific. And so both of those classes, though, the way that they were set up is so it was a 10-week quarter system. And in that 10 weeks, we had 10 classes. No, I'm sorry, 20 classes. There were 2 classes a week. And
Okay.
by the end of the quarter, you had to have, I'm going to say, 12 unique um, pieces of art done for this animal that you selected. So, like, I don't remember exactly what they were, but let's say you had to have a full sculpted skeleton, representation of the animal or whatever it
Okay.
was that you were making. And then you had to have, 5 different views of it in living its life, and just all these different things. There are all these different components. And then you were graded on all of this at the end. And of course, it was weighted. So, it's like if someone did
Oh
all the
no.
work, they got an A. And if someone did half of the work, they did not get an A, which I thought was fair because I did all the work plus some. But it was one of those things where it's only 10 weeks and people don't think that that time is ever going to run out. And it is over so much quicker than you think it's going to be. And like, right? Like time does not ever stand still. It does not ever stop. So you are constantly creeping closer and closer to
At
that
all.
deadline. And if you don't have a plan set in place, you are going to get to that last week and have, 160 hours worth of work to do in 48
Oh
hours.
my
And it's just not
gosh.
going to happen. So it is, it, I feel like that is just, it happens so often. And yeah, to your point, it's like, oh yeah, it's just a given, but like, oh my God, if you can get that under control, that will make the whole rest of it just so much more enjoyable for you. And that's what's important, right? Because you're doing this because it's something that you love and that
Right.
interests you.
Yeah. And I mean, you, I got taken aback because you said 200 illustrations in so amount of time, and I was like, wait a minute. I I don't I don't understand the yield, the capacity of just being able to function with 200 illustrations. I could barely make it past one. Let's be clear. But the fact that you had to have so many done in a time of like what 2 years you said,
I
that's
think it was 2, yes, I
yeah,
think.
that's insane to me. And so time management had to be hacked out like very accordingly. So I and you're saying that like and you took the stand and said, right, like I'm saying that this was not something that I did, and that's beyond what most people would do because they'll come on and say, yes, I did it, and I finished it
Oh,
with
right,
five
yeah.
hours of, I did it in 5 months. I was bored
Right.
because I no, you told the real that you struggle bus through this situation. So
Yeah.
yeah, I applaud you for thank you for being honest because
Okay.
that's the things that we don't want to just not allude to, but we definitely want to hear about things like that. So people get the understanding like yes, you will mess yourself up if you don't manage things correctly. Um, so let's talk about resources that you would recommend. So what resources would you recommend anyone that is aspiring to be a scientific illustrator, what would you say would be some key elements that they should go out and foster for themselves?
Yeah. I think this one it's gonna be very dependent on like what sort of niche avenue you want to head down, because there are so many different organizations that support these different groups. And then depending on if you want to be in like the thick of it with like the scientists, on top of, being in the thick of it with your peer artists, there's different groups that you could be a part of there as well. So it's, again, kind of a cop out answer, but definitely like Google organizations that are more geared towards your specific interest. But a
Mm-hmm.
few that I've either been a part of or I know of and know good things about. So the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators, that's going
Okay.
to be that's your peer group. They're national, they're huge. We, our my grad program really advocated to be a part of that group. So that's a big one. And then another big one, if you are into medical illustrating, is the Association of Medical Illustrators. You can also
Okay.
go through a certification program through them. The medical illustrator that I work with is certified. medical illustrator. I am not. I just help out on little bits here and there for her. So that's, that can further your career from that standpoint. You can get credentialed out of it. But it's also just a group that you can be a part of to learn and connect and that sort of thing. And then another one that I was a part of, just like to be near paleontologists and like get to like wave at the back of Bob Backer's head as he walked past the booth we're sitting in. For anyone who doesn't know who that is, he was one of the, I mean, this is like, if he ever watches this, like I apologize in advance that this is how I'm about to describe you, but he was one of like the main consulting paleontologists on Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Prolific paleontologist, like that. My description of him does not do him even like a smidgen of justice. So look him up. He's a cool guy.
No, I
Written a lot of
will
books.
definitely like tag these people. Like, help
Yeah.
me when
Oh
we're
no no
done.
no 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 no.
You're like, no, please don't. No, God.
No. Maybe not him. Maybe not him. That might be weird. But the long story short, the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology was the group that I was a part of, and they have different conferences throughout the nation each year, and it's just like a really big gathering of paleontologists, which they're fun. They're a fun group. So those are like I said, it's kind of a cop out answer. Like figure out what you like, and then find the groups that really matter to what you want to do. And there'll be plenty. Yeah. And some of these like Guild of Natural Science Illustrators too, they might even have, I haven't been a part of their group in quite a while, but they might even have like a database of like other groups that you can, that
Oh,
kind of
okay.
more, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess
Like,
specific,
yeah,
versus just,
more
yeah,
focused than other
yeah,
genres
focus. Yeah,
than, yeah.
exactly.
Well, girl, look, I'll forget them too. Me and me and my words today have not been on point like I usually am. So trust me, it's please excuse me. Um, so I want to talk about education. See, look at
There we
that.
go.
There it goes. Words. Educational impact, right? So before I get into this next question, I'm going to, for the sake of those that may not have the strongest digestive system when it comes to things that are a little bit on the side of more gore, I'll say PG-13. So like PG-13, maybe rated R. There's no X in here. Just let's get this clear.
No.
But PG-13, like some things that may insinuate some more graphic content, and then things that are rated R for explicit content like blood, guts, gore. Um,
Yes.
if you want, please listen for the sound of my voice. I am going to show some medical graphics real quick before we ask this next question. But just to keep the focus, I'm gonna show the graphics now, and then I'll let you know that the graphics are down, and we're gonna move forward with the question. So if anyone is a little bit uneasy about medical photographs or anything like that, then please block your view at this time while I cycle through these next three photographs. So stand by. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And I just want to make sure that you all know that it is clear. We are clear for any content disclaimer that I mentioned before. So let's go ahead and kick it. I know. I just want to make sure that I hope it,
Base
right?
one.
It was definitely a Jason or Freddy almost in depiction. But for those of you that are yielded to medical photography, you are good to come back to the screen and then continue with the conversation as we adjust. So, in what ways do you believe your illustrations help enhance public understanding and appreciation of science?
Yeah. So this will be kind of a two-part answer. I think, because I'll answer part two a little bit differently.
Okay.
So for part one, so the understanding standpoint, I think these medical illustrations are a great example of getting to that understanding quickly. So I think I teed this up before, but so these I just help out on bits and pieces of these illustrations. These are not by any means created from scratch by me or anything like that. We have a work smarter, not harder attitude when we do these. So what I end up doing for Lisa, the medical illustrator, is a lot of times I'll be more responsible for making these base images that we have. They could be stock graphics or a prone. A lot of times we'll start with like a prone figure. Oops, as I almost knocked my light off my desk. A prone figure, and then from there I'll take those and I'll manipulate the figure or the face to have more of a resemblance for her client. So
Okay.
that's like how we've kind of gotten into sync. I've also done some. I did a really gnarly a skull fracture, just shattered, poor lady. So like I'll do some of the actual injury as well, but a lot of it, like the groove recently that we've been in, is like getting, kind of leaning on some of that more, like my love for portraiture and like getting that to match closer to what the client actually looks like. But
Right.
so all that's to say, this type of work is really important. And it's again, this is like so niche to me. Like I had no idea that doing medical illustrations for court cases was a thing until I met her. But if you were injured in, whatever capacity 2 years ago, or let's even say 3 years ago, like we're still peak pandemic, like you
Right.
probably weren't able to get a court case for like not a court case, but like an actual court date for quite a while. Just with restrictions for, everything with health and everything else. And so, it could be like 2 years later that you actually are able to get in to
Oh, wow.
have your case heard. And by
Right.
then
Right.
you're hopefully all healed up and back in working order and that sort of thing. And so these sorts of illustrations are really great to like quickly convey exactly what happened at that time and why it's important to whoever's determining the outcome of the case. So like, for example, one of I think it was the first illustration that I had in there. It's a simpler illustration of a client who suffered a pseudoaneurysm behind her knee. And I don't know how many people might just be like, oh yeah, pseudoaneurysm. Of course, I know exactly what that is. I know what that does
Of
to your body,
course.
right? And so like this person suffered like serious nerve damage, and it's tough. And nerves are another, like, since they're not that physical bone or that muscle that you can really see the tear, they're a lot harder to kind of like conceptually grasp.
Yeah.
And so keeping it simple like that, showing like this was the issue, it impacted this specific area, and that then impacted the rest of her mobility on her leg or whatever else that she had, the other symptoms that she had. Like
Right.
that's
Right.
so important. And you just immediately, like, whoever's looking at that illustration is like, oh, I get it. Great. So I think that's really cool about medical illustrations. Like specifically, it just like, and it's scientific illustration in general, but that's just an example from some work that I've helped out on where it educates the audience quickly and effectively. And that I think is what makes a successful illustration. From appreciation, I like that question because this might sound interesting, but so for example, I did not ever take physics because I didn't have to, because I wasn't actually, I know, right? I know, it's blasphemous. I am actually not a very like truly science-minded individual. I always had trouble with like math and equations and things like that. So like I tried to just like, just kind of stay away. But so that's where, like, for me, I have a really big appreciation for the people who take the time to try to really, like, instead of reading how this happens, I can see how it happens. And
Right.
that's a lot more effective for people like me who, are more visual learners, versus those who, they just absorb text on a page like no problem. And they're just like, got
Right.
it, all good. So I think it's goes back to being like hand in hand, how the art can improve the understanding of the science, and then the science can improve the, like, I don't know, kind of creativity or the problem solving and the solutions
Right, right, right.
are. So
Going
I think
from
that's,
start to finish and like the central product of it all.
you know,
I got you. Okay. Yeah, and as you're telling me that, I'm going back to ionic bonds, covalent bonds. No one sees that in real life. You
yeah,
have to imagine that or have a really good artist that
right.
can depict these models for you. Um, so okay, well, we don't have any more graphic interpretations, so everyone can be
Breathe a
somber
sigh of relief.
from him, breathe it
Yeah.
right. Unlike me, that wanted to go to medical school and wanted to see all these crazy open fractures and things like that. I'm
Yeah.
probably having someone pass out right now, but I'm sorry. So, so what role do you think um, scientific illustration plays in the broader educational landscape?
I think it's pretty key for discovery, curiosity, and like keeping that at the forefront, especially for like younger, younger kids, individuals. Um, and that might sound strange because, like, you don't necessarily think of like a picture book as being like a scientific illustration, vessel or anything like that. But I think it's I think we maybe don't realize too how scientific illustration is truly everywhere. Like, we're kind of referencing back to these textbooks that we can, in
Right.
chemistry, like there's, and I swear this was in chemistry, but anyway, it doesn't matter. This is going to sound weird, but I just remember there being an illustration of Pavlov's dog in, I thought it was a chemistry book. And
I feel like that was bio. I know it was psychology for sure because of
okay,
the bell and everything.
right.
I know
Yeah.
it was definitely a psychology book that I've seen it, but it might have been some scientific illustrations too because of experimental value behind it.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, well, I don't know what it was specifically for. This was so 15, 20 years ago by now. But it's like, I just remember like that illustration. Like, I don't know that I would have maybe grasped the concept or the factors that go into this, the situation, but like the drawing was there. And like, you just kind of flip through these pages and you're like, oh yeah, whatever. It's the little vignettes are there. Like, those are all scientific illustrations, and they're all paired perfectly with whatever text is on that page to then help whoever's reading the text understand, in more than just one way how something is working. So I think you know, it's everywhere. It's super important. Even on like just a subliminal, level, like making sure that the I go back to the dinosaurs, making sure that the dinosaurs in the movie poster are anatomically accurate. They're not dragging their tails. They're not doing something strange that they wouldn't do, or, like that. That's that movie poster at the movie theater. Everyone's going to see that and they're like, oh, you know what? That looks pretty cool. And they're like, oh wait, what was that dinosaur that I saw at the movies earlier? And then they go on into a rabbit hole about
Yep.
learning about the dinosaur. So it's kind of integrated in all these things. And I think it's definitely really important, just on a general level, in the educational sphere. Uh, I don't know that really answered your question. I kind of rambled along there, but there
Oh
we go.
no, it definitely did because I mean, like I'm thinking about like just me going to, a movie theater or something like that, or even just walking down the hallway in a scientific building, the structures and composites that are on the walls versus what's in the illustrative books that I'm looking at. Totally different because you see 3D, 4D models in person, but then when you look at an illustrative process, it's like, okay, I can start to take apart the
Yeah,
layerings in it, and the focus is just different. Um,
yeah.
Plus, I can't go take a big artifact out of the science hall and bring it home and study it. It's kind of probably illegal, right? Um, so I mean, we can talk about, this is a good segue, right, into like future trends for artistry because I mean, like everything, art has a trend too. Um, we've seen that. So, what emerging technologies or methodologies do you think will I guess, transform, for lack of a better term, scientific illustration as we know it.
Yeah. I this isn't going to be so much of an answer as it is kind of just a question in itself almost. But I am interested to see what impact AI has on this sort of, I mean, in general, right? I mean, we've already seen how, like, what it can do at this phase of where it's at, and how is it going to positively or negatively impact what we know as, let's say, factual scientific, I'll say scientific fact. That's how I should have worded that. Because I think AI could be a really interesting tool to further, some of the, maybe put down in visual, someone trying to articulate what they're thinking for whatever, concept or theory they might have, and see how that could result. I can also see it being horrible because I'm a little bit of a pessimist with technology.
Speak your
Um,
truth.
well, it's
Because
like,
like in my head, I'm literally going to the worst possible end.
right.
Because I
It's
mean,
like,
we do have bad actors. We do have people that, turn everything that's supposed to be beautiful or good or magnificent into something ugly, grotesque, and just
mhm,
demeaning.
yeah,
Always the plot twist. So yeah, let's go there for like 2 seconds.
yeah, that's it. It's like, what then becomes, a fact, but not a fact, right? Like, I, anyway, we don't have to go off on that tangent, but I will be interested, standing from my distant space back here, to see how, artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence can hopefully positively impact, maybe it'll streamline some things or give people more, feel more empowered to explore, I don't know, their own creativity, or
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. But
Like me, where my stick figures will not look like stick figure humans sideways
right.
for cats, right? So it will be me. Um, so we're going to go into a little bit of personal discovery, personal reflection, if you will. So reflecting on your career so far, because we all do it. We all go back in time and look at things that we've done and try to rationalize and radicalize what we do today. So, what are you most proud of? Shining moments, gold star moments, and
Mhm.
what do you hope to achieve in the coming years? Little peek.
Yeah. So this is going to be another kind of odd answer, I think. I think I'm most proud of right now, kind of picking myself back up. I don't know how detailed I got earlier on in our chat, but I really did like step away from kind of art in general.
Okay.
After the third publication, just it was like, just because like I truly did let myself and everyone else kind of down on those two publications. And it was just like, it was just like too much. And I was like, it's easier for me to walk away from this, figure out what I'm doing, and then, we'll see what happens. And, don't follow my footsteps, people. If you're looking to be a scientific illustrator, like, pick yourself back up way earlier, figure your crap out, and, keep being the boss that you are. So I'm really proud that I've gotten to a point. It's been a couple years now, so fairly recently, that those I can, those were important in my career, in my life, but they're long enough ago now that I'm just really glad I've been able to get back into creating, just in general. So I'm really proud of
Right.
that. Hooking up with Lisa has been huge. Like, being able to do these medical illustrations on a very casual basis, just like that's like, for me, that's because I've got a full-time job also, and I'm designing knitting patterns. So I'm a little like tapped out on like a constant basis. So that's been just incredible. And I've learned a lot, just from working with her for, I think it's been 2.5, maybe 3 years now. So, and that to me is really validating, because it has a purpose. Like it's going to help someone it's going to help them not recover, but it's going to help them get past this terrible thing that happened to them.
Right.
Monetarily, but that's huge. I mean, medical bills, like, hello, it's crazy. So like that's important work. So I'm really like, I'm feeling really good about that. And then I'm also just, again, kind of weird. Knitting keeps showing up in this conversation, but I'm really proud of the accomplishments. Like I'm just about to hit 20,000 followers on Instagram, and I'm like, I've designed all these, I've designed all these patterns, and like people legitimately want to make them across the world, which is like mind blowing to me. And so I'm proud that I started this. I've been sticking with it because that seems to be my issue, right? Is like I'm a starter, not a finisher. I've been sticking with it, and I've been bettering myself each time, each new pattern. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take feedback from this last one. I'm going to incorporate into this one. And so it's like, I feel like I finally hit my stride, and I'm really proud that I recognize that also.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important too, to like be, present in the journey. We all try to like get to the final outcome, but like the final outcome is, being dead, right? So like let's try to
Live
enjoy
now.
the now.
Yeah. And
Oh,
look at the progress you've made. Like, I
right.
mean, in 5 years you can be a totally different person and just
Exactly.
have a
Yes.
totally different perspective on life. So I mean, just at this juncture, even in, a 2 year span, just, you know, and that's a thing too, right? Mental, stability, just making sure that you have the mental capacity to do whatever it
Right.
is that you're passionate about, but still give yourself a little bit time to kind of yield and focus on what you just did, evaluate it, and then
Yep.
decide if you want to keep it going or if you want to convert to something else. And I think
Right.
that's really like that's all I'm hearing, and it's triumphant because I don't think that any of that sounds negative. For me, at least, I don't hear anything, in a negative like, hey, you know what? I know I've acknowledged this thing. I've witnessed it as a failure on my part. I'm acknowledging that. I'm taking that in. I'm taking it in a stride. I'm gonna make myself better for it. Let me step back and
Right.
evaluate what's going on and let me focus on how I can make this better. All of that is a freaking journey of triumph and like magnitudes beyond what you think. So just to come back from that and not just quit, I mean, that speaks volumes to one, your character. And I'm pretty sure somebody on this platform that sees this, whether we know it or not, probably needed to hear that. And just, heck, I needed to hear it. There's Let me tell you, I'm not gonna sit here and try to pretend like I'm pretty poised and put together. I'm very good at shining bright, but this is not this is by no means an easy thing. I've tracked a great many a desert to get to this piece, but right, but just the personal reflection and being so candid and open about it, I appreciate it for you to even give us whatever piece you want to and being honest about it because the honest characteristic is the prevailing one that I see. So just letting you know my little spiel on that one before we move on to my next question and give you your aura that I cannot draw around give you your halo effect. So how has your approach to scientific illustration evolved over time?
Yeah. I am so for anyone who maybe hasn't figured it out, I give myself a little bit of script ahead of time. I'm gonna rewrite the answer to this one, I think. Um, so I and then I immediately lost my train of thought.
Oh no, I'll give you a minute.
Oh,
Find it.
no, we're good, we're good. I think one of the things that has evolved for me is, and it kind of goes back to that like time management sort of importance, is I've started to figure out, and just this is something that naturally happens in any field, but I mean in art definitely, you figure out what you're good at, what you can easily replicate, and then you gain an efficiency in the work that you do by replicating that thing. Maybe it's if it's especially like I'm talking digital again, of course. um it's adding a texture that you're like, this is my go-to texture for, this sort of like skin condition or whatever.
Right.
I think that before, at the very beginning, it was all like, and that might be why I burnt myself out so quickly, is because it was like, I have to be absolutely fully 170% committed to this one individual piece at all times. And it's like, you can still be absolutely fully committed to an illustration or a piece of an illustration or whatever it is. Um, but you can do it a little bit more efficiently.
Right.
You can find tools that help you get there quicker and probably get better results, and you'll probably be happier with it. And then you can move on to something else that is, you know, the next thing on your task list. And I think that learning what I am most efficient with and how to be able to replicate that regularly has definitely been an evolution for me. The media's really stayed the same. I'm either like all in on traditional, or I'm all in on digital. I don't really do a ton of mixing and matching or anything like
Right.
that. And my style has definitely changed, because I do feel it's like your style will alter over time and it will evolve, like any, like hopefully, personalities can change. But like anything else, like your lived experiences will impact your style of art in one way or another. And so, over time, I think that has evolved a little bit as well. I think I'm maybe a little bit more softer on some of the some of the edges, I'll say, just in general, of work that I do. But yeah, I think over time the evolution primarily has just been like figuring out the efficiencies and capitalizing on that.
I mean, hey, you couldn't have come up with a better answer. And I mean, I think one of the evolutions that you've definitely talked about was the, I guess, like the yield to criticism too.
Mhm.
I think that was another one that, like, you can't be caught up in everybody else's judgment. You just have to take
It
it.
will it's too
It will
much.
eat
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, I mean, even that, I don't know if you took that as an evolutionary piece, but that's definitely something to focus on, because I mean, you could always go back to that inhabilitation to kind of like, oh, I'm going to focus on what they say, and the critics are judging me, and this doesn't matter. I'm this, that, and whatever the case may be, in a negative connotation. And going from, I care what people think, the judgment is constructive criticism at best. I can evolve from this and I'm going to do better. But I'm not doing this because they've said something. I'm doing this because
Right. Right. Yep.
it makes me
Yep.
better as a person.
Yep.
So yeah,
Exactly.
I'm taking some of the, like, I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes and I'm putting them in my back pocket, because let me tell you about that criticism, lady. It's a
Every,
doozy.
everyone should have to go through an art school critique, I swear, because it's like having someone sit there and be like, "Well, that's an interesting choice. Why did you do that?" That whenever someone tells you, "Oh, that's interesting," that means they're too nice to tell you that is an utter piece of crap that you just put up on the wall. And
Yes,
it's just like,
like, how dare
oh
you
my gosh.
insult them and their eyeballs with this
Yeah.
dramatization? Like, what is
Yeah.
this? Yeah. um,
Everyone needs to go through that so that they can like come out a little stronger at the other side.
thicker skin is, yeah, the
Yeah.
thicker skin concept. Yep. Um, okay, so then we've got one more question for you, for at least the personality piece. What personal goals do you have for your future work? If you want to
Yeah.
give us any insight.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a half-formed answer. I'm happy to just tell you whatever. So I don't really know. I would love to figure out a way to kind of redeem myself in the like actual like scientific illustration industry, and maybe potentially get back out into the publishing world. But then again, I'm like, well, am I just saying that because I was talking about how I have come this far and that sort of thing? Like, should I go back into it? But maybe I shouldn't. So maybe instead a goal for me is, figuring out how to get bigger, badder dinosaurs on my knitting patterns. And, like, so I don't totally know what a legitimate goal, um, would be like for future work per se, I think I want to continue to be happy with the work I am producing, whether it's, the fiber art, or it is digital, not necessarily digital, but it is scientific art. Um, I think that's important. And then working on, the self-doubt that all artists have. You gotta, and then, we've all got a little bit of anxiety, at least a smidge, it's like
Everyone,
getting that,
everyone.
just, that's really it. Yeah. Just kind of keep going down. The goal is to keep going down the path and feeling good about the path I'm on. So,
I mean, words of wisdom, because let's just talk about this path, right? Because people will take the easier brick road. They'll take that and say, you know what, I'm good at this. I'll just stick with that. But very rarely do you find people that are willing to yield to challenges. And I think that the fact that you've hit challenges, you've stuck them out, you figure out what works and keep it moving. Like I swear, I'm definitely not making this up. I could just imagine someone ridiculing something that I've taken an effort and heart and soul into, and then they say that's just not good enough. Or I just did not meet what I was supposed to do because a client had too much of a concept that just came at me too fast. I couldn't imagine. So strong, girl, strong. Look, let me tell
I'm glad I'm coming off that way because
you're like, I do this every day. I'm just, um, let's go ahead and venture into a little bit of a tune of the dynamic for roles of art in STEM. So, how do you think art contributes to the broader STEAM fields, and why is this important to include um, art alongside more traditional STEM subjects?
Yeah. And I think, we've definitely talked, I probably will be repeating myself a little bit. We've definitely hit this a few times. Art is just such a great storyteller. And it's just so important, when it's paired with a complex, STEM subject. And it adds an extra layer of accessibility to, different types of learners. They have a different way that they can absorb that information, and become interested about that information. And then they can go on and, do their research, or pique their curiosity to go, look something up online or find a book or whatever. But go the route that they need to go to be able to learn that subject the way that they learn, since we're wired so differently.
Right.
And so it's like, I feel like it's just like, they're just like a perfect little pairing. Like they really go hand in hand. And yeah, it's just, I think the art really just helps with that accessibility, especially, in education and these complex subjects in general.
Yeah. So can you discuss the impact of visual learning tools like scientific illustrations in like a STEM subject or STEM education?
Yeah, it's kind of going off the same thing, like, keeping the complex subjects digestible and enjoyable. Because yeah, if someone's trying to learn something and they're not enjoying it, they're definitely not going to comprehend what they're learning, right? Just like in one ear, out the other, or
Yep.
like I'm looking at the page, but I'm literally just not even reading what is there.
Right.
So, like I kind of go back to the chemistry textbook. Like you don't think much about it when you're there in the classroom, but those drawings could be the difference between someone actually grasping that concept and someone completely missing out on what could be a really interesting experiment, or, I don't know, factor theory, whatever. Um, that just because it wasn't visualized properly, they just couldn't comprehend it properly. And so I mean, I know it's a lot easier for me to grasp things when I'm looking at a piece of art
A
versus a
picture.
giant
Yeah.
text.
Yeah, no, and I don't know, like science is just one of those things that you have to have physical evidence to
Yeah.
see to establish a real concept. Like you could be an audio learner if you want to, but there's nothing like seeing an actual graphic showing that
Yeah.
type of depiction. So, okay, well, I mean, look, I Now we're going to get down to like, I guess, like the advice portion.
This is
I know.
my favorite
So
part.
prepare yourself. Hold on to all things tethered. So advice for aspiring STEAM professionals. What advice would you give to young professionals aspiring to build a career in STEAM fields, particularly women and underrepresented minorities that are not keen on how to include artistry into STEAM?
Yep. I so we kind of casually touched on this earlier, actually, unintentionally, I think. But
Cash.
sur yeah, we're just that good. Surrounding yourself with a supportive group of peers is really important in this industry. And this could be a mentor in the field, it could be a professor at school if you actually are in, like let's say you're in a scientific illustration program or just a general, Bachelor of Arts or a Master of Arts program from whatever department you happen to be in. But finding someone, that you feel represents your personal lived story. Because I think that's key too, is that seeing someone that looks like you being successful is important. So so that you understand that you can also be successful. And I promise these people who are successful also want you to succeed. So it's finding that group. It could be people at your own level, like actual peers. It could be these professors. It could be an industry professional that you took that step and you went out to that conference and you passed out your business cards and you actually connected with someone and they were kind enough to say, yeah, let's keep in touch. And you actually kept in touch. Like those people are your people that you need to find, and they will be so instrumental in helping you develop yourself throughout your career, especially starting out. And then at some point, you get to be that person, and that's really cool because then you get to give it back to the next generation. Um, but one thing I've also learned, and this is definitely a piece of advice, and I kind of said it earlier, that these people who have succeeded do want you to succeed. And if they don't want you to succeed, like drop their butts and find someone
Get
else
rid of
because they
them.
are
Yes.
not good. But something else that I've learned kind of based off of that is that there is always room for creativity. There is always, I think Andrea might have said this in the last one, but there's always room at the table. It's like if you don't think you're good enough or you don't think you have X, Y, or Z factor, like it's probably not the case. You probably just have something different to offer. And that could be invaluable to, a potential client out there. So I think that's important. Keep that in mind, find your peer group and understand that support is not always gold stars and attaboys and attagirls. It is also constructive critique and using that to better yourself and your craft, and approaching that through the lens of self-improvement. Because especially if you do find that mentor figure and they offer you advice on how you could improve whatever it is you're working on, scientific diagram painting, how you craft an email to someone. I mean, communication is also huge, right? But like taking what they say and understanding that they're coming from a place of respect, and that it's like that's huge. That's huge, and that's what I keep
Yes.
coming back to with this whole critique element, a criticism element, I should say, is that a lot of times when people say stuff, they're really not trying to like bring you down. And the ones that are like just go have a
Get
glass
rid
of
of
wine
them.
and ignore them, get over it. Yeah. But yeah, it's finding that support, because you also don't want, and this again is going to get a little personal, I think. You also don't want to just always be told that you're doing a good job. And I think that's where a lot of people in our demographic suffers is, we're, I think, told a lot that we've done so well growing up. Oh, and then you really don't know what it actually feels like to kind of get tripped up on that hurdle and how to
Right.
recover from it properly. So it's important that the people you have in your group are going to be truly honest with you, not just, pump up.
Right. Cheerleaders and never tell you the real, you know, not to degrade you, but to
Right.
keep your focus
Yeah.
for better or worse. Yeah, I totally wholeheartedly agree to you on that because I mean, there's so many things that come to mind, and over the years, I've learned that through different areas in my life that I've had these different positions and things like that. Because I wasn't always in science. Sometimes I was
Mhm.
in tech. Sometimes I was military and things like that. And I mean, I think the military is probably the roughest, but because they kind of get paid to tell you that you suck at certain things, right? But in the professional world, it's a little more tactful, but you still have to have that open dialogue and be able to get that from your mentors. That they're not all gonna high five you and pat you on the back. They're gonna bop you on the
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah. Yep.
that's yeah, all inclusive mentorship. That's what we should call it.
Mhm.
We're coining that, Mary.
Yes. We have a few things
So
here. I think we need to get
I
into
know.
the
I look. We
copyright.
need to get some copyrighted
Yeah.
for real. We said so. We've had some pretty dynamic conversation on this, and I loved it. I knew it was going to go the way that it was going to go because I just know. But I'm glad that it went this way because it shows the dynamic traceability of your background, the complex that you went through, and then it shows other people that like there's real people out here that do this for a real living. That it's not just copied from like you know, I don't know, what's her name, Heda Lamar or somebody back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. Like this stuff is constantly being progressed, and the better we are in AI and things like that, the more structured your type of work is going to come out. It's going to be freaking epic, and I can't wait. So excited times 50,000. So as we conclude our deeply engaging discussion, because I would keep her on the line, but I know people have to go to bed for work in the morning. Um, we have talked about the discussion on the intersection of art and sciences, and I'd like to, invite Mary to share her parting thoughts. Just Mary reflecting on the dialogue today, from exploring the role of artistic techniques in scientific communication to discussing the creativity and the creative challenges of depicting complex biological concepts. Say that three times fast.
Right.
To the importance of accuracy and aesthetics in scientific illustrations. How um, these elements influence public understanding of science. Could you give us your thoughts on, you know, what this all means, and give the audience a final takeaway?
Yeah. So I think my final takeaway would be something to the effect of, that scientific illustration is a really huge sort of, if we want to call it a genre, we can call it a genre. But if it's something that
Right.
you're interested in pursuing, or even just interested in learning more about, there are so many different focuses in this huge, umbrella term of scientific illustration that, especially if this is what you want to do for your career, like take your time, figure out what path is going to bring you the most happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment. And then, follow that path, and that path might wind, and that might, you might end up in a forest when you started out in a field, but it's such a cool, interesting just industry. And I'm really happy that I found it. And even after everything that's gone on, I'm really proud to get to be a part of it. So it's great. Scientific illustration is awesome. So that's kind of,
And I
and
mean it.
if there is anyone on this call that like is truly interested in, learning more about, different places to get inspiration or steps to take, or, ideas of how to maybe potentially reach out to an art director or something like that, and just like hit me up. I don't know a lot, but I will impart what I can to you.
I mean, and just that alone is worth its weight in gold because a lot of people just say, "Hey, yeah, I'm a part of this community. All right, sayonara,"
Yeah.
and and that's it, right? You like, can I ask you a question? Like, okay, just come here for autographs and that's it. Um,
Right.
so that's one of the things that's awesome about, the individuals that come to speak on this platform. Y'all are so giving, so knowledgeable, but at the same time, you are willing to, you know, impart the knowledge and still be accessible to people that are really interested. So I'm giving you so much gratitude because that's awesome. I don't know who will bother you at some point, but whoever it is, let them know that's, you know, I'm glad that you're giving them an open door to walk through. So that's phenomenal, and I applaud you for it because it's not often that you get that type of inclusion, right? Um, so with that, I think. All right, I'll let you go. Fine, Mary. I will.
I kept you on like an hour longer than we.
I do not care in the slightest. So as we bring this to a close, I want to extend my warmest, most deepest, most sincere thank you to Mary for, I mean, not only the things that I'm about to say, but putting up with me for the last few weeks because she has like I promise you I did not so just for y'all's edification, I didn't know Mary prior to this. She was the focus of someone else in the organization. And I was like, I've got to get on the phone with this lady. I've got to get on this call with her. I've got to talk to her, a few times just to get her. And she's been so like warming and like really open and honest and things like that. So offline, like this is no facade. Mary's really like this. As I mean, all of our guests that are going to be on this panel, they're really open and honest and very welcoming. So I'm grateful for that. Um, Even though we didn't know each other before then, I feel like I've known you forever, and that's awesome. So you have that aura about you.
Come up here and I'll teach you how to knit, like legit.
I'm not joking. Your poor husband, he's gonna be like, "Who is that?" Oh,
Don't worry
let me
about it. Don't
show
worry.
you. Right, right. But yeah, I mean, thank you for your colorful and charismatic inspiration. Um, Thank you for everything that you've shared, your beautiful artwork that you've brought to the forefront, so we can acknowledge the beauty and excitement behind it. Um, Thank you for the conversation and the magnificent frame of exposure to your world and all the things that you do. Um, to the audience, we hope that you were enlightened, mesmerized with wonder. We hope you come back and pause and look at these structures a little more closely and more dynamic and more thought provoking. We hope that you've overly enjoyed and are overjoyed with the insight to all of the creative and imaginative side of the science and technology aspects. Um, I've had fun putting this together. I kid you not, like I was so waiting on everybody to see this intro and this like 3 minute break because I was like, I worked on this. This is awesome and this is art. And we're also grateful for the individuals that were open and authorizing for all of the creative input that we had on the show. So all of those detail arts are not just Mary's; they belong to other artists or other organizations that own them contractually, and we're really grateful that they were open and available for us to share with the audience. So thank you all. Mary, please let them know that I say thank you. Um, and then we are, we're not all on a bench flying high or, doing any kind of, exploring caves or like trekking mountains and trying to find all these crazy sculptures and pieces of replica from dinosaurs past. And we're not on the seas trying to find these expeditions and these deep diving explorers, oceanographers, things like that, or planetary observers and going beyond with the stars and being astronauts and things like that. Some of us are, you know, behind the bristles and the paintbrushes and the lens of the camera or the calibrated hand that is, working on medical devices or modeling things. Those are the people that we need to have in this aspect to give us this glorified knowledge that we so sustain for STEM as a whole. So with that in mind, please look for our next STEAM Speaker Series guest speaker. Details coming soon. I can't let you in on the secret, but you probably, if you've seen the newsletter, my dears, you already have an insider's knowledge because we have some really dynamic people coming up. Mary is one of most of the greats that are going to be on here. I've got some other people that are coming soon to the STEM speaker series near you, but definitely keep up with us. Follow us, tag, subscribe, like this post to keep them coming because I need your feedback. Even though I'm not an artist with a brush or a stencil or something like that, I'm an artist putting out this canvas and saying, hey, look, this is a platform that we're trying to push for people to get into STEAM. And I need your support to let me know whether or not this is a thing that we need to continue. I mean, maybe I'm grasping for straws or something, and this makes no sense. Why are we doing this? Like, let me know. But please let me know your thoughts. Leave comments and definitely stress what you think should come next. And maybe I'll find one of these comments and figure out somebody that I can pull out of my back pocket of inspirational thought leaders and pull them on this platform like I've convinced poor Mary to be on here today. so,
Hey, I've
so
had a great time. So
I really did. Like I hope you take this back and take it to all the people that really helped put this together with you and let them know like we had them on platform. This was awesome. I enjoyed it. Um so thank you all for tuning in and exploring the fascinating world of scientific illustrations as well as appreciating the incredible beauty of science through art. I'm Amberson Cornett. This is Mrs. Mary Hunt. and we are together changing the dynamics of STEM in the focus, and we are also empowering women in science, one discovery at a time. So until next time, STEM enthusiasts, be great, be awesome, be well.